Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the heart of Riverdale, a mid-sized American town with a history that danced between quaint and eerie, the whispers of its past melded with the tension of its present. The rhythmic lapping of the river against the worn stones echoed tales of bygone days. But one tale recent and foreboding hung thick in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. It began on a foggy late autumn morning when the local newspaper, the Riverdale Gazette, reported a chilling discovery. A body was found on the banks of the Serpent River. The victim, a young woman, was a familiar face in the Tauna barista at the popular coffee shop, Brewed Awakening, known for her infectious laughter amid the clatter of cups. However, that morning painted a stark contrast. The absence of warmth in her eyes was replaced with silence, forever frozen. As the news spread, the tight-knit community found themselves grappling with an unsettling truth. Evil could exist in their world, just beyond their white picket fences. Investigators pieced together the last hours of her life amid the cacophony of sirens and the low hum of the river, the aroma of pumpkin spice lingering in the cold air. Her friends united in disbelief, recalling how vibrant she had been just days before. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the town nestled into its usual stillness, but the undercurrent of fear pulsed harder than ever. Shadows crept longer as questions multiplied, leaving a haunting echo in the concrete and cobblestones of Riverdale. The victim. With the chill of autumn gripping Riverdale, the community struggled to shake the tragedy that had descended upon it. Emily Hartman, the name imprinted in the minds of those who knew her, had been the embodiment of youth's promise and vitality. At 24, her life ebbed and flowed with dreams and aspirations, punctuated by smiles that could light the gloomiest of morning. Now those dreams lay shattered along the banks of the Serpent River, forever entwined with the mystery of her death. As investigators delved deeper into Emily's life, they discovered facets of her existence that painted a vivid portrait, one that was both cherished and complex. Emily had been an avid artist, spending her weekends under the sprawling limbs of old oak trees, her canvas splattered with colors of life. Friends remembered evenings filled with laughter. Laughter that now left an uncanny silence among the group. Among those who mourned her loss was Mia, Emily's childhood friend, who found it impossible to reconcile the memory of their shared dreams with the grim reality that now overshadowed them. The barista had recently been in a tumultuous relationship, an unpredictable storm that had taken its toll on her serene demeanor. Mia was acutely aware of the late-night phone calls, the raised voices that punctured the calm of their shared sanctuary. Though any mention of conflict remained shrouded in secrecy, it became evident to investigators that Emily's interpersonal relationships might serve as a key to her untimely demise. Each friend, haunted by fragments of their last conversations, struggled to articulate what they had seen, from the glow of hope to the flicker of fear. The townsfolk gathered to honor Emily's memory at a candlelight vigil, flickering flames mirroring the warmth she had brought into their lives. As night enveloped Riverdale, unease lingered, leaving behind a collective breath held tight in their chests, a sinister reminder that amidst love, darkness thrived unnoticed. The crime scene. The morning sun broke through the fog that had cloaked Riverdale, casting a harsh light on the scene that now seemed a world away from its quaint surroundings. Yellow tape fluttered in the chilling breeze as detectives cordoned off the crime scene, their solemn expressions revealing the weight of the tragedy they had been summoned to unravel. The once vibrant banks of the Serpent River, known for lazy afternoons and laughter, were now a grim tableau disrupted by loss. As investigators from the Riverdale Police Department moved methodically, each step was accompanied by a collective breath, held in hope or perhaps dread. Emily's body lay prone near the water's edge, partially obscured by autumn's fallen leaves, her lifeless form a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of nature. They noted the absence of any immediate sign of struggle. The tranquil surface of the water suggested nothing but silence. Detective Mark Ramirez took point, his gaze scanning the nearby underbrush. The scent of damp earth mingled with the ripe decay of fallen foliage, a reminder of nature's indifference. He crouched down, examining the slight disturbances in the soil that could hint at an altercation, marks that were both subtle and significant, perhaps overlooked in the chaos of grief. Any piece of evidence might be the key to unlocking the truth behind Emily's last moment. A forensic team meticulously documented the crime scene, the sound of cameras clicking echoing like gunshots in the charged atmosphere. Fingerprints were collected, likely left on the coffee cup beside an emblem of normalcy, now laced with tragedy. A small silver locket, tangled in Emily's hair, drew the detective's attention. It was an object as personal as it was revealing, its significance waiting to be uncovered. Officer Megan Brooks, surveying the surroundings, noticed the solitude of the riverbank, a landscape untouched by the bustle of city life, where secrets could thrive in the still. Only nature could speak. It would tell stories of prowling shadows, whispered fears, and the violent stillness that followed. The early investigation. In the hours following the grim discovery, the small confines of Riverdale Police Department buzzed with an intensity fueled by urgency. As each investigator set to work, the gravity of their task pressed down upon them like an anchor. Files filled with Emily's life were spread out on desks, fragments of her world laid bare each file, a potential connection to the life she had lived, and the circumstances leading up to her death. Detective Ramirez gathered his team, their expressions a mixture of determination and weariness. "We need to draw a clear timeline," he stated, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of pressure. "Everyone she interacted with in the days leading to her death is a potential witness or a suspect." The absence of physical evidence at the crime scene offered both promise and frustration. Interviewing friends and family revealed discrepancies in their accounts. Some mentioned a burst of conflict, while others pointed to an ongoing struggle that had concerned them. Ramirez had the sense that beneath the surface of each story lay hidden truths, masked by loyalty, fear, or a reluctance to dig deeper into the chaos of Emily's final weeks. Officer Brooks spent hours tracing Emily's final known movements, methodically piecing together her last hours at Brood Awakening. The scent of coffee drifted through the air as she examined the surveillance footage from that evening. There it was, a fleeting glimpse of Emily sharing an animated conversation with a man whose presence now loomed large over the investigation. He had the inflection of a familiar local, someone who seemed to vanish as quickly as he appeared. As they prepared to delve deeper, every detail mattered. Phone records revealed calls to and from, a number that was quickly tracked to an ex-boyfriend. With each piece of information, the atmosphere thickened with questions. Clouds of suspicion coalesced above their heads, threatening stormier weather ahead. They would need to navigate not only the myriad of human emotions, but also the tight bonds of a community that seemed determined to protect its own, even as darkness crept in. The dead ends. As days turned into weeks, the diligent work of the investigative team began to bear heavy weight. The vibrant spirit of Riverdale seemed to dull, drained by the shadow of the tragedy that had permeated their lives. Yet, with every new lead they chased, the case grew increasingly labyrinthine. What once seemed a manageable investigation now spiraled into a web of elusive truths and fading memories. Detective Ramirez and Officer Brooks found themselves at a particularly daunting crossroads. They followed leads involving Emily's former relationships, but met brick walls at every turn. The ex-boyfriend, Tom, presented himself as a broken man, genuinely mourning the loss of Emily. Yet his alibi for the night of her death contradicted crucial elements of the timeline they had reconstructed. Investigators sought out witnesses who had claimed I'd seen them together, only to discover miscommunication and muddled recollections, leaving holes in every version of events present. There's no clear motive, no clean connection. Brooks exhaled, frustration evident in her voice. The spiral of misdirection was draining their resources, and as they delved into the social threads wrapped around Emily's connections, habits, and history, the importance of approaching each exit, whether closed or wide open, seemed starkly vital. The community that had once rallied for justice now displayed an unease, as if the lingering mystery bore a contagion. Friends, hesitant to share their own fears, hesitated further in the shadow of their own seat. They monitored the whispers in coffee shops and grocery lines, but the more they listened, the more they found themselves back at square one. In dark times, even the smallest detail could ignite a new path. It was imperative they don't lose sight of Emily's essence amid the disarray. As the autumn chill deepened and leaves withered, there was a sense of urgency. Time might offer solace, but it could also bury the truth deeper into silence. A break in the case. Just as the autumn of Riverdale began to wither towards its final crescendo of color, a flicker of hope ignited within the confines of the police department. Ramirez shuffled through a stack of forgotten witness statements that had been collected during the chaotic first days after Emily's death. Among them, one statement stood out in bold contrast to the sea of hesitations. A local teenager, Jamie, had mentioned an eerie encounter near the Serpent River days before the discovery of Emily's body. Jamie claimed to have seen a man lurking by the water's edge, behavior that instinctively raised her alarms. She had stood, watching from a distance, unsure of what to do. In her retelling, the description of the stranger was vivid. The man was tall with dark hair and a distinct tattoo on his forearm. Encouraged by the detective's instinct, Ramirez and Brooks sought the teenager out immediately. As they sat with Jamie in a small booth at Brood Awakening, they noted the lingering trepidation in her eyes. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air as Jamie recounted the evening. With palpable tension, that strange man had been talking in hushed tones, glancing around, as if he knew he was being watched. From a narrative perspective, the detectives understood well that the teenage witness may have overlooked vital details under pressure. However, her fresh recollection brought clarity amidst the growing fog of uncertainty. Every detail mattered. The detectives observed Jamie's unease as she sketched the tattoo's jagged flame, entwined with a serpentine motif that inexplicably resonated with the case at hand. Back at the precinct, they worked to identify any man matching the description. Soon, they unearthed a recent criminal figure, a local with charges for harassment and a history of altercations. As they traced his whereabouts from previous encounters, it became clear he had crossed paths with Emily, weaving him into the narrative they were desperate to resolve. Hope surged anew. The time for quiet mourning might soon give way for justice, as a clearer direction emerged from the once murky waters. The suspect. As twilight settled over Riverdale, Detective Ramirez and Officer Brooks prepared to confront their new lead. They drove through the winding streets under the oppressive weight of impending rain, determination guiding their search for Ethan Carr, the man whose name had emerged from the shadows of Jamie's recollection. Ethan had lived in the outskirts of town, an area that mirrored his tumultuous history. His past was peppered with violent encounters and careless choices. When they arrived at his ramshackle apartment complex, they were met with peeling paint and flickering overhead lights that barely illuminated the cracked pavement. The air was thick with unease, reverberating with the low rumble of distant thunder. As they ascended the creaking stairs, each step felt heavier, laden with the gravity of what they hoped to unearth. They knocked loud enough to announce their presence, the sound echoing through the corridor like an ominous prelude. Ethan opened the door with an expression that shifted between confusion and guarded anger. Ramirez presented his badge, feeling a weight settle upon him. "We have some questions about Emily Hartman. They're heavy and palpable." Ethan's demeanor morphed, his bravado faltering under the light of scrutiny. He insisted on his innocence, claiming to have seen Emily at the river coincidentally on the night in question. But his stammering words tangled and fell flat like discarded leaves. "I wasn't there. Didn't do anything." His defensive posture and darting eyes suggested otherwise. As the conversation progressed, he seemed to recall small details that didn't quite align. Inconsistencies surfacing like shadows at dawn. Each inquiry posed by Brooks revealed a trace of familiarity with Emily's routine, further feeding their suspicion. The detectives probed deeper, feeling the tension grow with every question. Was he just another aggrieved local? Or did he harbor darker intentions? Before the evening descended into more uncomfortable silence, Ramirez leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We know about the tattoo, and we know you were where you shouldn't have been." His words hung in the stagnant air. Time slowed as the reality of their suspicions settled between them, encapsulating the moment. Ethan's facade began to crack. As they left the apartment, rain began to patter against the pavement, an omen of the turbulent storm of emotions now brewing within Riverdale. Each drop echoed the growing urgency to unravel the threads of a life tragically cut short. The trial. The atmosphere in the Riverdale courthouse was thick with tension as the trial of Ethan Carr commenced. The air was buzzing with anticipation, a collective sense of justice and grief coiling in the hearts of the onlookers. Families, friends, and concerned citizens packed the wooden benches, their faces a blend of hope and trepidation. The once quiet corridors of this small town felt transformed, resonating with whispers and quiet sobs as the community finally wrestled with the reality that had hung over them for far too long. Detective Ramirez sat with his team, recalling the intense investigation that had brought them to this day. The evidence against Ethan had formed into a formidable narrative, the eyewitness accounts, the tattoo that marked him as a ghost of Emily's last moments, and the unsettling testimony of his past. As the prosecution laid bare the chilling details of Emily's last hours and Ethan's connection to her, the courtroom held its breath, hanging on to every word. As the defense mounted its case, they painted Ethan as a victim of circumstance, a man wrongly accused, desperate to escape the shadows of his past. They highlighted inconsistencies, arguments that sown seeds of doubt in the minds of the juror. The image of Emily, vibrant and hopeful, clashed sharply with Ethan's image of chaos. Yet, the prosecution held firm, tapping into the shared memory of the community, binding Emily's laughter with the anguish that followed her death. Fear and anger coiled around the courtroom, each day of testimony driving the emotions deeper into the psyche of Riverdale. Emily's family displayed quiet vulnerability, their presence a reminder of the life lost verdict papered over with pain. Their patience, however, was rewarded when the jury deliberated and the final count echoed through the courtroom. As the jurors returned with a verdict, a suffocating silence settled over the crowd. The foreman's voice broke the stillness, announcing a guilty verdict. Relief shattered the oppressive tension like glass, yet cries of victory stratified with bitter grief. The weight of justice coursed through the room, grief in its sweetness, while the reality of the loss echoed painful. As the gavel fell, sealing the fate of Ethan Carr, the brave spirit of Emily Hartman began to resurface in Riverdale. The community would learn to heal, weaving her memory into the very fabric of their lives. They had confronted their darkest hour, emerging with a renewed strength born from the remembrance of lost love, life, and laughter. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, Riverdale began to exhale a collective breath that had been held too long. The sound of life resumed its gentle reverberation, but beneath the surface, the echoes of Emily Hartman's life and tragic death continued to ripple through the tight-knit community. Conversations and gatherings were tinged with an awareness of fragility, as wrestled with both newfound appreciation and residual pain. At Brood Awakening, once a haven filled with laughter and warm conversations, a makeshift memorial adorned one corner faded photographs, flowers, and candles, symbolizing both remembrance and loss. Mia, Emily's closest friend, found solace in organizing a community art event in Emily's honor, encouraging artists of all ages to express their grief and joy through their creation. As colors blossomed on canvases, each stroke became a healing touch both for the artists and the community enveloped in sorrow. Detective Ramirez and Officer Brooks sifted through the files of the case, now a historical record of once fractured lives. They approached their work with a new lens, understanding that justice was never merely about verdicts. It was also about healing wounds, invisible to the eye. They made rounds to the families affected by this tragedy, victims of loss and families of the accused, offering understanding and paths toward dialogue that had been obscured by fear. The trials of the past lingered in the minds of many, but slowly there emerged a spirit of resilience. Candlelight vigils continued to spark reflection, shifting from sorrow to celebration, honoring Emily's vibrant spirit while also acknowledging the tangled web of emotions that defined their shared existence. Inside Riverdale Elementary, kids painted murals on the playground walls, each image reflecting a different piece of Emily's character. A burst of laughter, a splash of artist's paint, a steaming coffee cup. As they unveiled the murals, in a small ceremony, Mia stepped forward to speak. Her voice trembling but resolute. As daylight faded over Riverdale, the unity of the community prevailed in the understanding that they were not just mourning a life lost, but celebrating a heart that continued to beat within them, within every stroke of paint, every shared memory, and in every moment of hope. Emily's legacy intertwined with their resilience, each individual becoming a flame, refusing to be extinguished. Reflection. As time continued its relentless march forward, haunting memory of Emily Hartman transformed slowly from raw anguish into a bittersweet reminder for the residents of Riverdale. The community saw her as a symbol of their collective capacity for resilience as they navigated the ever-evolving landscape of grief. Conversations had shifted from mournful reflections to celebratory stories, echoing a truth that Emily had imparted on everyone she touched. Life was to be embraced, cherished, and lived fully. One crisp evening, Mia found herself strolling beside the Serpent River, where the haunting shadows had once mirrored her deepest sorrow. The water's gentle flow now felt like a balm, each ripple reverberating with Emily's laughter, not heavy with loss, but enriched with memories. As she walked, whispers of the past intertwined with the present. Other locals joined her. The riverbank, now a gathering spot, infused with warmth, laughter, and love, an exodus of grief transforming into a celebration. Mia cast her gaze towards the horizon, where the sun dipped low, spilling magnificent hues across the sky. Emily had always loved this time of day, vibrant colors reflecting her ardent spirit. It felt fitting that Riverdale, too, could transform. Beneath the weight of sorrow, seeds of hope had taken root. They were community members vowed to remember Emily, but also to live in a way that honored her journey, uniting them across wounds that had once felt insurmountable. As the stars blinked to life overhead, Mia knew they would carry Emily with them. In their reflections, they would emerge not just as mourners of a tragic end, but as keepers of a luminous light that once shone brightly, guiding each step forward.